Hey everyone, Paul Asadorian here from Security Weekly and the Cyber Risk Alliance. I am here with Mr. Matt Alderman. Matt, welcome.
Thank you, Paul. Always a pleasure to get together with you. I just wish I could do it in studio more
I know,
often
it would
these
be
days.
nice, yes. But we are virtual and remote for this to talk about the Security Weekly event Unlocked, done in conjunction with the Cyber Risk Alliance, which is really exciting. I'm excited we have some time set aside just to talk about some of the things that are happening at Unlocked. As you may hear the announcements on the shows and things like that, but this is our chance to kind of dig into what's happening on the event on December 10th. This is a free event this year, and we put together a lot of special things. I guess we can start with the just go through the agenda, and the highlight reel which doesn't exist yet. We're working on creating it. And by any stretch of the imagination, if listeners have suggestions for that, we're happy to get suggestions. But we're going to go through our archives and put together a highlight reel. It's going to be a lot of fun.
15 years of video and audio and photos should make a good highlight reel, Paul.
I think so. It's interesting. The early days was only audio, and we've got some pictures of us. I even think I have pictures. If I look hard enough, I have pictures from episode 1. It's going to require a little bit of digging on my part, but I definitely have. So the first montage, I think what we're talking about is doing the kind of history of Security Weekly, like the good old days, I guess you could call it. And they're still good old days. The old days of Security Weekly, when it wasn't even called Security Weekly. Well, Security Weekly was in the title, but we called it something else. And then, so a lot of audio and pictures that we'll kind of walk through some of the early days of Security Weekly. I'm going to give a welcome keynote, but I'm just going to tee up the event, right? Talk about some of the talks and tracks and what's relevant. I'm going to keep it short, brief, and try not to bore everyone with a welcome keynote.
What I think is interesting here, Paul, is we're trying to balance this live and virtual event concept. And I think you're planning to do your keynote live, although the rest of the first part is pre-recorded in a virtual format. So we're already balancing that. As we get later into the day, when we get to the live stream event, we're really trying to balance that across pre-recorded content and some live content to hopefully help with the one thing I hear the most that our practitioners, our audience, they miss. It's the engagement side of being at a physical event.
Yeah. And that's hard. We've got a Discord channel that will be active, and special channels within our Discord server that will be specific to the event, so you can follow along and join the community discussion for the entire day and night on December 10th. What I like about the tracks that we chose, and we chose 3 tracks that will run simultaneously during December 10th. What I like is it's really representative of the topics we talk about on the Security Weekly network. So we talk about offensive security, defensive security, and strategy and culture. And I think it's very representative of our shows and the topics that are discussed here on a weekly basis.
Yeah, it really highlights our primary kind of enterprise shows, right? We talk about all those components across your original show, Paul, Security Weekly, being very offensive security focused with the penetration testers and the red teamers. We talk a lot about defensive security on Enterprise Security Weekly, Application Security Weekly, Security and Compliance Weekly, right? We talk strategy. We talk leadership and communication on Business Security Weekly. So it is really a culmination of all of our shows in an event format.
And, in the offensive security category, I wanted to make sure we covered penetration testing. And I think the first talk that's listed there by Matt Hamilton, pen testing with Kubernetes, which is kind of interesting. We sometimes think of it as we're going to do a pen test on Kubernetes, but this is pen testing with Kubernetes. And it's interesting, Matt, one of the reasons why I really like this talk is because when you and I first started talking about containers, well, Matt was talking about containers. I was going, what are you talking about? Years ago. When I started digging into it, I was like, oh, wait, we could use this for penetration testing and for defense. It's applicable on both sides.
Yeah, it's a very interesting kind of evolution of the strategy work we were doing way back in the day together before we started doing Security Weekly together, to see how containerization and Kubernetes and the orchestrators have evolved, not only to serve up, these highly dynamic and microservice-based architectures for applications, but leverage that same stuff for building labs, building tools for penetration testing and other use cases beyond what I think we originally were focused on back in the day.
And along the container theme, Vivek Ramachandran from Pentester Academy is going to talk about the top 10 sins of container security, kind of a page right out of my book. And I was like, who better than Vivek to give this talk? Largely because if you go into Pentester Academy, his Docker security labs are just awesome. In fact, I've referenced those and used those all the time for some of my presentations. So definitely check those out and tune into Vivek's talk.
One of those will be no root. It's my big saying on Application Security Weekly is don't give up root in your containers.
Yep, no root, no privileged containers either. Hopefully Vivek will dig into that. I know we will because his labs definitely let you actually exploit those vulnerabilities, which is really awesome. Corey Finley, URL scanning for fun and profit. And, that just URL scanning. How can you go wrong with URL scanning? And for fun and for profit, how could you go wrong?
Right. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's just fun.
Right. And profitable. So you have that. Sentiment mining is just weird. Kevin Finisterre from Digital Munition. This is going to talk about drone hacking. I think Kevin's going to go through some of his drone hacking stuff. I was so excited to see this one because I was like, Kevin can actually come and talk about stuff publicly. Now, you probably won't see Kevin's video because he's not big on sharing video, but the fact that Kevin can come on and do this talk was really exciting for me.
Yeah, I mean, you really were excited when he submitted this talk because he's like, you wanted Kevin on.
Yeah, and like I said, to actually be able to talk about it, and he hasn't been kidnapped by China, which is good too, because I like Kevin. He's a good friend of mine. Then we've got a social engineering panel head up by the moderator, April Wright. Now, that will feature Chris Hadnagi from Social Engineer. Marina, how do you say that name, Matt? I'm going to need help with the pronunciation now. Ciavata?
Oh,
Marina Ciavata.
Ciavata, yep.
And Alith Denise? How do you say it? We should have practiced this before, but in true security fashion, we don't know how to pronounce anyone's name. I'm going to go with
Alith Dennis, I think.
Alith Dennis, yes. And I think there's still a couple open slots on that social engineering panel. And the topics and direction, what we told the hosts yesterday when we met with them who are leading these panels is I gave the hosts complete creative freedom. I'm like, you obviously ask me questions if you want to, but develop the theme and the questions for the panelists and drive the discussion. And we chose hosts to moderate these panels based on their areas of expertise. April teaches courses on social engineering, and so April was the logical choice to lead this panel, and so on and so forth throughout the other panels. When we get to defensive security, the API security panel, with good transition, with Mike Shima, who hosts our Application Security Weekly show, and that will feature Kevin Johnson, Jason Kent, and Erez Yalan, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that became a panel because there were multiple submissions around API security, and we said, why not turn it into a panel and bring the three of them together to talk about API security? It's an emerging area of concern. We were talking about containers and microsegmentation and these architectures. Well, API is the glue that holds all this stuff together, and there are security concerns there.
Absolutely. Peeling back the layers with Security Onion 2 with Doug Burks, the author of the Security Onion, and that tool just makes it so easy to do defensive things within your network. Implement Bro, implement the Snort IDS. I mean, Security Onion is just a wonderful platform for defenders and therefore earning a slot in our defensive track.
Yeah, and a next evolution of capabilities in Security Onion 2. So it'll be very interesting to see all the new things that are now available in Security Onion.
John Strand really is the master of deception in so many ways. Of course, John and I have collaborated on lots of different content focused around deception. We've taught classes at Black Hat together. We've written books together. We've collaborated on numerous presentations. And John's kind of back on it. He's like, I still want to, I'm not done talking about deception. So John's talk is titled Easy Peasy Deception with Mr. John Strand from Black Hills Information Security. And I think,
I came up with that title because, John's so busy.
Yeah.
I kind of put that title in there because he's done similar talks around this. And so I think it would be really easy for him to kind of break down the different deception techniques and what works and what doesn't, and what's easy and what's not.
And that's awesome. And there were two more kind of themes that these last two slots really speak to, in my opinion, and that is the full purple juice, not the watered down stuff. And that's Jorge Orquiles and Bryson Bort from Scythe. And that really hit on two notes for me, right? Hit on the purple team note, which I think is important to be, that could go in the offense or defense track, right? But this is going to speak a lot to adversary simulation, which I think is a very important topic to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those topics that we talk about often, is this whole evolving space around the adversary and simulating that, modeling that, understanding how attacks come in. So you bring that, and then you pair that with the next one, Paul, which is around MITRE ATT&CK.
MITRE ATT&CK, which was the other topic that we felt like we needed to cover in some capacity. Brian Donahue from Red Canary will give a talk titled The Great Refactor. We adopted attack sub-techniques, and you can too. Which is awesome. Strategy and culture. There were a lot of submissions. And look, I'm not going to claim that there wasn't bias here, but there was a lot of submissions around career management, career planning, and things of that nature, and information security breaking into the field. And we almost did a whole panel on it, and I'm not saying we're going to ignore that content, moving forward here at Security Weekly. However, I've known Bill Swearingen for a really long time. Bill and I have spent a lot of time trying not to get in trouble unsuccessfully at conferences in the past. And Bill submitted this talk, and I have to admit, I loved the talk description, but also knowing Bill was really, in our discussions, I was really pushing for it because, again, like, I know Bill, and it's how to land your dream job in information security. And Bill's really going to share his experiences in this talk, and it just sounded like it was from the heart and soul. And I'm like, we just have to have this talk, and we made it happen.
Yeah, we had other great submissions. Yeah, I mean, and a couple of them we've brought onto the shows, and a few of them we'll probably bring on to future shows.
Oh yeah,
but Bill's definitely stuck out for you.
Yes. And then we have the diversity panel, moderated by Dr. Doug White. And that will feature Mandy Logan. Mandy was featured on the show and has presented at numerous security conferences. And Lordrina Schern, I want to say, is how you say her name, from Cyber Reason, and Gabe Gums from Spirion will make up our diversity panel, which, of course, it's important in today's day and age in many different aspects. Very important to cybersecurity, having people from different backgrounds and having diversity in your teams is super important when it comes to security. Effectively, we're looking for anomalies oftentimes, and having people with different backgrounds gives you a lot more context to think about how attackers might work, to think about how you spot an anomaly, and think differently about problem solving and information security when you've just got mountains of data and you have to go find those one or two things. So for all those reasons and more, diversity is extremely important.
Well, in our industry is so vast, Paul, that the skill sets of different people fit into various places on that spectrum of security. Social engineering is one of those areas where it's all about communication and being able to convince people to do something. That's a very unique skill set, part of our broader security landscape.
Of course, near and dear to my heart are Ron and Cindy Gula, for just so many reasons. Again, I won't, try and claim that I wasn't biased here at all, quite honestly. And those of you that listen to the show for a while know the relationship we have with the Gulas goes back many, many years. They were one of the first sponsors. Tenable was on the Security Weekly show. And of course, so much has transpired since then with Ron and Cindy. They, of course, now run Gula Tech Ventures. And their topic is talking about data care. And the reason I like this talk is because it was trying to change the narrative and not talk about cybersecurity, but talk about data care. And those topics really interest me. I like it when people try to, as hackers do, challenge the norms.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because Ron and I used to debate the term cybersecurity. I've never been a big fan of the term. I grew up when this was called information security. We had information security, we had physical security. Now we have cybersecurity, and cybersecurity has a connotation to it. So I think this is a really interesting discussion because what Ron and Cindy are trying to do here is actually move away from that term that the industry has just, I think, overused in some respects, to really talk about data. Because look, at the end of the day, everything we're trying to do in most cases is protect data in some form or fashion. That's why I always go back to my triad of app, user, and data. That's, to me, that's the triad of what we're trying to do. I think this is a really interesting discussion on how to move away from the cybersecurity terminology more to a data terminology. So it'll be interesting to hear that one.
We wanted to include something about working from home and something related to the global pandemic because while we've talked about it so much this year, we felt it couldn't be ignored. And we were really looking for a different angle to talk about, one, the global pandemic, and two, working from home. And Lee Neely and Shell Clements, Lee and Shell, as we lovingly call them, are just, they're like the most happiest, wonderful couple that you ever want to be around in your entire life. And so when they submitted a talk together on the topic of we moved from 100% remote workforce almost overnight, and we want to talk about our experiences, it was a shoo-in for this slot.
Yeah, and they kind of put a cute little wrapper around it, like how I spent my spring vacation. Did a lot of us get a spring vacation this year?
Right? I didn't. Maybe I did. No, I didn't. In any case, not complaining. Well, and then the last talk we can't forget, Hacker Rights with Chloe Mestaji, I want to say. Is that how you say her name? And we also, this felt or filled a requirement for us to talk about hacker culture in some light. Centering around hacker rights, I think, is extremely important because, well, also it's the 25-year anniversary of the movie Hackers, so I felt we had to have something that really spoke to the hacker culture. And the fact that one out of four hackers don't submit vulnerabilities due to fear of outdated legislation, press coverage, ninja lawyers, things of that nature, is still an issue in our community. And I thought it was a great conversation to have and talk to have in our program.
Absolutely. Not that that's but after what happened with the coal fire,
yes,
folks,
especially that. Yep.
Right. I mean, this is just, I think it's very timely to talk about this. We brought a lot of these issues up on the show. I think this just kind of brings it together in a more formalized way. So I think is a really good topic.
And then I'll do a wrap up of the day. We'll do the second part of the highlight reel where you'll see some of the more recent clips from Security Weekly. The pulling the 5 questions into even a shorter part of that montage is always entertaining. Just to watch all of those kind of back to back is really fun. So that likely would be part of that second highlight reel, as well as a lot of other really funny things. Then we'll take a break, and then we'll do the Paul Security Weekly show, this being the 15-year anniversary of our podcast. And we've broke that down basically to have 3 roundtables to talk about these very same topics. So we'll have an offensive security roundtable and talk about penetration testing, as we've done for the past 2 years. We'll talk about defensive security and specifically innovative blue team techniques with a separate panel of folks. And then the final panel, similar to last year, strategy and culture. And I titled this one Hacking Matters, so that basically we could go in really any direction that we want, and with it, as long as it relates to hacking, it's Hacking Matters. So,
yep. What I love about this part of the event is this is something new. Again, I talked about this at the beginning. We got this combination of virtual and live. You spend the day getting really great content from the community and from all these great speakers and panelists. And then we transition to the live show and continue that engagement through the virtual event into a live event. That's what I find very interesting about this format.
I think that's really interesting, Matt, because it would almost feel like we spent the day at a conference, and at night we all went to the bar, went out to dinner together, and shared drinks and talked about what was happening in the conference that day and talked about security. And that's really what the the last basically almost 3 hours are going to be is basically a 3-hour drinking and/or dinner experience as part of the conference, right?
Exactly right. And that's what I think is really interesting, because I think that's what people are missing right now is that engagement, that interaction, and to have those conversations. The virtual events don't really allow that to happen, and we're trying to recreate aspects of that with the live stream event. So hopefully it works out not only for all of the attendees, but for any of our sponsors, because I think it is something new, but I think it's a really creative way to bring back aspects of that physical event that everybody's missing.
Agreed. I hope everyone can attend the Unlocked event, securityweekly.com/unlocked. Matt, closing thoughts about the conference.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's interested in sponsoring the event and engaging with our community, you can always send an email to sales@securityweekly.com. That's a way to get to us. Paul's already given you the website, the abstracts. The agenda will be updated constantly on securityweekly.com/unlocked.